A man ordered to sell a poor alien widow and her daughter, but he chose to become their family. Marcus Chen stared at the holographic display floating above his desk, the blue light casting shadows across his weathered face. The assignment details made his stomach churn. He had been a debt collector for the Galactic Commerce Union for 12 years, but this was different. This wasn't about repossessing a starship or foreclosing on a mining operation. This was about people. The Zephyrian widow, Lyra Starweaver, owed 300,000 credits to the Nexus Banking Consortium. Her late husband had taken out loans to fund his research into clean energy solutions for their dying homeworld. When the research failed and he died in a laboratory accident, the debt transferred to his family. Standard galactic law allowed creditors to sell debtors into indentured servitude if they couldn't pay. Marcus rubbed his temples. He'd seen plenty of aliens during his career, but the Zephyrians were something special. They looked almost human, except for their luminescent blue-silver skin that seemed to shimmer like starlight, and their large, expressive eyes that held depths of emotion most species couldn't comprehend. They were known throughout the galaxy for their kindness, their artistic abilities, and their complete inability to understand deception or cruelty. The transport ship, Meridian, hummed quietly as it approached the outer colonies of the Zephyrian system. Marcus watched through the viewport as the twin suns of Zephyros Prime cast long shadows across the agricultural settlements below. The planet looked peaceful, almost pastoral, with its floating cities connected by bridges of crystallized energy. It was hard to believe that beneath this beauty lay the desperation of a dying world. His comm unit chimed. "Approaching designated coordinates, Collector Chen," announced the ship's AI in its emotionless tone. "Target residence identified. Shall I initiate landing procedures?" "Affirmative," Marcus replied, though every instinct told him to turn the ship around and report the family as missing. But he had his own debts to consider, his own family back on Earth Colony 7. His daughter Sarah needed surgery that cost more than he made in 3 years. The bonus from this collection would cover it completely. The house sat on the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley filled with bioluminescent flowers that pulsed gently in the evening light. It was small and modest, built from the locally grown crystal trees that Zephyrians used for construction. As Marcus approached the front entrance, he could hear soft music drifting through the walls. Not mechanical music, but the natural harmonic resonance that Zephyrians created when they were content. He knocked on the door, and the music stopped immediately. When the door opened, Marcus found himself looking down at a small Zephyrian child. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old in human terms, with the same luminescent skin as her species, but brighter somehow, as if she carried an inner light. Her large violet eyes looked up at him with curiosity rather than fear. "Hello," she said in accented Standard Galactic. "Are you here to see Mama? She's making dinner." Before Marcus could respond, a woman appeared behind the child. Lyra Starweaver was breathtaking in the way that only grief and strength combined could create. Her skin had the typical Zephyrian luminescence, but it was dimmed by exhaustion and worry. She wore simple clothes that had seen better days, but she carried herself with dignity that made Marcus feel underdressed in his expensive collector's uniform. "Kira, go inside and finish your studies," Lyra said gently, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Her eyes never left Marcus's face, and he could see she knew exactly why he was here. The child, Kira, looked between them with the intuitive wisdom that children sometimes possessed. "It's about Papa's work, isn't it?" she asked quietly. Lyra's expression tightened slightly. "Go inside. Little Star?" Marcus waited until the girl disappeared into the house before speaking. "Mrs. Starweaver, I'm Marcus Chen from the Galactic Commerce Union. I think you know why I'm here." "I do," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear he could see in her eyes. "Please, come in. You must be tired from your journey." The inside of the house was warm and filled with the soft glow of Zephyrian biolights. The furniture was simple but well crafted, and every surface held small mementos, crystals that held recorded memories, artwork that seemed to move and breathe, photographs of a family that had once been whole. Marcus noticed that while everything was clean and organized, there were signs of their financial struggles. Patches on the furniture, meals that looked stretched to last longer, clothing that had been mended multiple times. "Would you like some tea?" Lyra asked, moving toward the kitchen area. "It's Zephyrian Dream Blossom. It helps with difficult conversations." Marcus was about to decline. He always kept things professional. But something about her quiet dignity made him nod. "That would be nice, thank you." As she prepared the tea, Marcus found himself studying the photos on the walls. A happy family of 3. The father clearly a scientist based on his lab coat and the background of gleaming equipment. Kira, as a younger child, laughing as she played in gardens that must have been magnificent before the environmental collapse. Lyra and her husband on what looked like their bonding day, their faces radiant with joy. "He was trying to save our world," Lyra said quietly, noticing his attention. "The solar arrays were failing and our people were becoming sick from the artificial energy sources. Jorik believed he could create something better, cleaner, something that would help not just Zephyros, but other worlds facing similar problems." She handed him the tea in a cup made from the same crystal material as the house. The liquid inside glowed softly, and when he sipped it, Marcus felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with temperature. "The research was expensive," she continued, settling into a chair across from him. "We mortgaged everything. When the experiments failed and the accident—" She paused, taking a shaky breath. "The creditors came within a week of his funeral." Marcus set down his cup carefully. "Mrs. Starweaver, I have to tell you that the Nexus Banking Consortium has ordered your sale into indentured servitude, you and your daughter. The debt is 300,000 credits plus accumulated interest." He watched her face crumple for just a moment before she regained control. "I see. How long would the servitude last?" "Standard terms are 50 years for the primary debtor, 25 for dependents." The cup in Lyra's hands began to crack under the pressure of her grip. 50 years. Kira would be in her 30s before she was free if she survived that long. Indentured servants were often worked to death, especially aliens who had no political protection in human space. "There has to be another way," Marcus found himself saying, though he had no idea where the words came from. "Maybe we could work out a payment plan." "Or, with what?" Lyra's voice was bitter for the first time. "Our world is dying, Collector Chen. There are no jobs, no opportunities. The evacuation ships only take those who can pay, and we spent everything trying to save everyone else." From the other room, they could hear Kira humming softly as she worked on her studies. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, the natural harmonic abilities of her people, turning a simple melody into something that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "She doesn't know," Lyra whispered. "I haven't told her that we might be separated. Indentured servants are often sold to different owners, aren't they?" Marcus nodded reluctantly. Children and adults were indeed often separated, sent to different sectors of the galaxy based on their potential usefulness. "Mrs. Starweaver, I want you to know that I don't like this. If there was any way I could—" "But there isn't," she interrupted gently. "You have your orders, and I'm sure you have your own family to think about. I understand how the galaxy works, Collector Chen. The strong survive, and the weak are consumed." Before Marcus could respond, Kira appeared in the doorway holding a tablet displaying her schoolwork. "Mama, I finished the essay about Earth history. Did you know that humans used to fight something called world wars, but then they stopped and started exploring space instead?" The teacher says humans are good at learning from their mistakes. She looked at Marcus with bright curiosity. Are you from Earth? I've always wanted to visit. Papa said that humans were the ones who helped create the Galactic Commerce Union, and that they were known for being fair and helping people solve problems. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. The child's innocent faith in human goodness made his mission feel like the worst kind of betrayal. I'm from an Earth colony, he managed to say. That's wonderful, Kira beamed. Maybe you can tell me about it sometime. Mama says that learning about other cultures helps us understand ourselves better. Lyra stood quickly. Kira, why don't you go pack a small bag? Just some clothes and your favorite things. Are we going somewhere, Mama? We might be traveling soon, Lyra said carefully. Pack light, but take anything that's important to you. As Kira disappeared again, chattering excitedly about the possibility of travel, Marcus felt something break inside his chest. He'd done hundreds of collections, processed thousands of debt transfers, but he'd never felt like this. Never felt like he was about to destroy something precious and irreplaceable. Mrs. Starweaver, he said slowly, what if there was another option? She looked at him with surprise. What do you mean? Marcus pulled up his personal financial records on his handheld device, his mind racing. The bonus for this collection was substantial, enough to cover his daughter's surgery and then some. But looking at it now, compared to what these two people were facing, it seemed like blood money. I could pay off your debt, he said quietly. Lyra stared at him in shock. Collector Chen, that's 300,000 credits. Why would you? Because it's the right thing to do, Marcus said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Because your daughter believes humans are good at solving problems, and maybe it's time I proved her right. I can't let you do that, Lyra protested. You don't even know us. We're just aliens to you, strangers. No, Marcus interrupted. You're a mother trying to protect her child. You're a woman carrying on her husband's dream of making the galaxy a better place. You're people, and people help each other. At least they should. He began entering commands into his device, transferring funds from his personal account to the debt collection system. His hands shook slightly as he watched his life savings disappear, along with his daughter's surgery fund, along with any financial security he'd managed to build over 12 years of work he hated. There, he said when the transaction completed. Your debt is cleared. You're free. Lyra was crying now, luminescent tears that sparkled like tiny stars as they fell. I don't understand. Why would you sacrifice so much for people you just met? Marcus stood up, feeling lighter than he had in years despite having just bankrupted himself. Because that little girl in there believes that humans are good. And maybe if I prove her right, I can start believing it too. He moved toward the door, but Lyra caught his arm. Wait! You said your daughter needs surgery. How will you pay for it now? I'll figure something out, Marcus said, though he had no idea how. I always do. No, Lyra said firmly. You saved our lives. Now let us save your daughters. Marcus started to protest, but she held up a hand. My husband's research wasn't completely worthless. He developed several preliminary energy solutions that could be valuable to the right buyer. And Kira and I, we have skills. Zephyrians are sought after as artisans, teachers, healers. We can work, we can earn money, and we can help pay for your daughter's surgery. You don't have to. Yes, we do, Lyra said, her voice strong with conviction. You showed us what family really means. You chose to put our welfare before your own, even though we were strangers. That makes you family now, Collector Chen, and family takes care of each other. From the other room they could hear Kira humming again, the melody bright and hopeful. Marcus realized that for the first time in years, the sound of someone else's happiness didn't make him feel empty inside. My name is Marcus, he said, and I think I'd like to hear more about your husband's research. Lyra smiled, and her luminescence brightened noticeably. Welcome to the family, Marcus. A man ordered to sell a poor alien widow and her daughter, but he chose to become their family. 3 months after Marcus had cleared their debt, the small crystal house had become something he'd never experienced before, a real home. He sat at the kitchen table, helping Kira with her mathematics while Lyra worked on translating her late husband's research notes into standard Galactic. The evening light streaming through the bioluminescent windows cast everything in a warm, otherworldly glow. Marcus, why do humans use base 10 mathematics when base 12 is so much more efficient? Kira asked, her stylus hovering over her tablet. At 8 years old, she had already mastered concepts that challenged university students on most worlds. Because humans have 10 fingers, Marcus replied, wiggling his digits at her. We're practical like that. Kira giggled and held up her own hands, which had 12 delicate fingers. Then Zephyrians should use base 12, shouldn't we? You do, little star, Lyra said from across the room, not looking up from her work. That's why you're so good at these problems. Marcus watched the interaction with a warmth that still surprised him. In the 3 months since he'd given up his savings to free them, his entire life had changed. He'd resigned from the Commerce Union, unable to stomach the idea of destroying other families. Instead, he'd been helping Lyra organize Jorik's research while they figured out their next move. The research was remarkable. Jorik Starweaver had been working on bioenergy conversion systems that could transform organic waste into clean power. His calculations suggested it could work on any world with sufficient biological matter, potentially solving energy crises across dozens of systems. The problem was that the technology was incomplete, and the practical applications required resources they didn't have. Marcus, Lyra said suddenly, her voice tight with excitement. Come look at this! He moved to peer over her shoulder at the holographic display she'd been working on. The proximity made him acutely aware of her presence, the way her luminescent skin seemed to pulse gently when she concentrated, the subtle floral scent that all Zephyrians carried, the graceful way her 12 fingers danced over the controls. I've been cross-referencing Jorik's notes with the Galactic Energy Database, she explained. Look at these power consumption reports from the Outer Rim colonies. The display showed dozens of settlements struggling with failing power systems, many of them agricultural worlds with abundant organic waste. They're all paying premium prices for imported energy cells, Marcus observed. Exactly. And according to Jorik's calculations, his bioconversion system could provide the same power at 1/10 the cost, using materials they're already throwing away. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. You're talking about a potential market worth millions of credits. Billions, Lyra corrected. But we'd need investors, manufacturing partners, distribution networks, things we don't have access to. What about the Terran Development Council? Kira piped up from the kitchen table. In my Galactic Civics class, we learned that they help fund new technologies that benefit colony worlds. Marcus and Lyra exchanged glances. The TDC was notoriously difficult to approach, requiring extensive documentation and proof of concept that they couldn't provide. But Kira's suggestion sparked an idea. What if we didn't go to the big investors first? Marcus said slowly. What if we started small, proved the concept works, then scaled up? How? Lyra asked. There's a human agricultural colony about 2 days from here, New Harvest. I collected debts there a few times. They're struggling with power costs, and they have mountains of organic waste from their farming operations. If we could build a small prototype system there, we'd have proof of concept, Lyra finished, understanding immediately. And New Harvest's administrator is David Rodriguez, Marcus continued, his mind racing. I know him. He's a good man, practical. If we can show him real results, he might be willing to let us use his colony as a test case. Over the next week, they threw themselves into preparation. Lyra worked 18-hour days refining her husband's designs, while Marcus handled logistics and communication with New Harvest. Kira, despite her age, proved invaluable at running calculations and spotting errors that the adults missed. The breakthrough came when Kira noticed an inconsistency in the power output equations. "Mama, Papa's notes say the bioconverter should produce this much energy, but the math doesn't work unless you account for the harmonic resonance of the organic materials." Lyra stared at the display, then at her daughter. "Kira, you're brilliant. The resonance, that's why the lab tests kept failing. Jorik was testing with dead organic matter, but the system needs living biological fields to achieve full efficiency. Which explains why it would work perfectly on an agricultural world," Marcus added. "The crops, the soil microorganisms, even the farmers themselves would contribute to the resonance field." They departed for New Harvest the following morning, aboard Marcus's former collection ship, the Meridian. The vessel had been his only significant possession left after paying off the Starweaver's debt, but he'd never been happier to own something in his life. As they traveled through hyperspace, the small family settled into comfortable routines. Kira spent hours in the ship's observation deck, watching the stars and practicing the harmonic singing that was traditional among her people. Marcus found himself drawn to these sessions, mesmerized by the way her voice seemed to make the very air around them shimmer with mathematical precision. "Her father had the same gift," Lyra explained one evening as they watched Kira practice. "Zephyrian children learn to sing the frequencies of the universe before they learn to speak. It helps them understand the connections between all living things." "Is that why she's so good at mathematics?" Marcus asked. "Partly, but mostly it's because she has her father's curiosity and her grandfather's stubbornness. My father was a master craftsman who never accepted that something couldn't be improved." Marcus studied Lyra's profile in the soft light of the ship's bioluminescent panels. Over the months they'd lived together, he'd watched her transform from a grieving widow into a determined scientist and entrepreneur. Her natural luminescence had grown brighter, and she'd started wearing her hair in the elaborate styles traditional to Zephyrian researchers. "What about you?" he asked. "What were you before all this happened?" Lyra smiled sadly. "I was a memory keeper. Zephyrians have the ability to store experiences in crystalline matrices, preserving them for future generations. I specialized in recording the stories of our people, maintaining our cultural heritage. When the environmental collapse began, my work became even more important. I wanted to make sure that if our world died, our culture would survive." "It will survive," Marcus said firmly. "In Kira, in you. You're carrying it forward." "With your help," she replied, meeting his eyes. "I never thanked you properly for what you did, Marcus. Not just paying our debt, but choosing to stay, to become part of our family. Most humans wouldn't have done that." Before Marcus could respond, the ship's navigation system chimed to announce their arrival at New Harvest. Through the viewports, they could see the agricultural colonies spread across the surface of a verdant world. Vast fields of grain and vegetables stretching to the horizon, punctuated by processing centers and residential complexes. David Rodriguez met them at the spaceport, looking exactly as Marcus remembered. A tall, weathered man in his 50s with graying hair and the kind of steady presence that inspired confidence in others. He greeted Marcus with genuine warmth and showed polite curiosity about his new companions. "Marcus tells me you have a solution to our energy problems," Rodriguez said as he led them to his office. "I have to admit, I'm skeptical. We've looked at dozens of alternatives over the years." "With respect, Administrator Rodriguez," Lyra said, "I don't think you've looked at anything like this." She activated a portable holographic projector, displaying the bioconversion system's schematics. As she explained the technology, Rodriguez's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine excitement. You're saying this system could convert our agricultural waste into usable power? He asked. All of it? The failed crops? The processing remnants? Even the sewage from the residential complexes? Everything, Lyra confirmed. And because the system works with living biological fields, it would actually improve crop yields by creating beneficial resonance patterns throughout your agricultural zones. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, clearly intrigued but cautious. What would you need from us to test this theory? A small plot of land, access to your waste processing systems, and permission to build a prototype converter, Marcus said. We'll cover all the construction costs. If it works, you get free power and improved crop yields. If it doesn't, you've lost nothing but a few weeks of our time. And what do you get out of it? Proof that the technology works, Lyra said. Data we can use to attract investors and expand the system to other colonies. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing the risks and benefits. Finally, he nodded. I'll give you 3 months. If you can show me real results by then, we'll discuss a permanent installation. Over the next 6 weeks, the small family threw themselves into the most challenging project any of them had ever undertaken. They worked from dawn to dusk, building the bioconversion system from scratch using materials sourced from New Harvest's own industrial fabricators. Marcus handled the construction logistics, drawing on skills he'd never known he possessed. Lyra managed the technical aspects, translating her husband's theoretical work into practical engineering. And Kira, despite her youth, became their secret weapon. Her intuitive understanding of harmonic frequencies allowed her to fine-tune the system's resonance patterns in ways that left even her mother amazed. The frequencies need to match the soil composition, Kira explained to Rodriguez during one of his daily visits to their work site. Every world has its own harmonic signature based on its geological structure and biological diversity. Papa's notes show the calculations, but you have to feel the rhythms to get them right. Rodriguez watched in fascination as the 8-year-old adjusted complex harmonic modulators with the confidence of a master engineer. Has she always been this advanced? Zephyrian children mature quickly when they find their passion, Lyra said proudly. Kira has her father's gift for understanding energy systems, but she approaches them more intuitively than he did. She doesn't just calculate the frequencies, she sings them. The breakthrough came during the 7th week of testing. Marcus was reviewing power output data when he noticed something extraordinary. The bioconverter wasn't just meeting their projected energy production, it was exceeding it by nearly 30%. Lyra, you need to see this, he called out excitedly. She hurried over to examine the readings, her eyes widening as she processed the data. That's impossible. According to Jorek's calculations, we should be plateauing at this efficiency level. Maybe Papa's calculations were conservative, Kira suggested from where she was monitoring the resonance controls. Or maybe the system works better when it's built with love instead of just mathematics. Marcus and Lyra exchanged glances at the child's innocent wisdom. Over the weeks of working together, they had indeed poured their hearts into the project. It had become more than just a business venture. It was their way of honoring Jorek's memory while building a future for themselves. Run a full diagnostic, Lyra instructed. I want to understand exactly what's happening here. The diagnostic revealed something none of them had expected. The bioconversion system wasn't just processing the organic waste they fed into it. It was somehow tapping into the broader biological field of the entire agricultural zone. The crops, the soil microorganisms, even the colonists themselves were contributing minute amounts of bioenergy to the system through natural harmonic resonance. It's creating a symbiotic relationship with the entire ecosystem, Marcus breathed in amazement. A living power grid, Lyra added. The system doesn't just convert waste, it harmonizes with all life in the area, making everything more efficient. Rodriguez arrived an hour later in response to their excited communication. When he saw the energy output readings, his face went pale. "You're telling me this system is producing enough power to run half our colony?" he asked. "And improving your crop yields by 15%, Kira added helpfully. "The harmonic resonance is optimizing your plant's growth patterns." Rodriguez sat down heavily in one of their makeshift chairs. "Do you understand what this means? If we can scale this up, we could become energy independent. More than that, we could become energy exporters." "That's exactly what we hoped," Marcus said. "But this is just the beginning. Imagine if every agricultural colony in the Outer Rim had systems like this. Imagine if we could adapt the technology for other types of biological environments. We'd be looking at a fundamental shift in how the galaxy approaches energy production," Lyra concluded. Rodriguez looked at each of them in turn: the former debt collector who'd given up everything to save an alien family, the widowed scientist carrying on her husband's dream, and the brilliant child who somehow understood the music of the universe. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to call the Terran Development Council." As Marcus watched Rodriguez place the call that would change all their lives, he felt Lyra's hand slip into his. Her luminescent skin was warm against his palm, and he could feel the gentle pulse of her heartbeat through their joined fingers. "Thank you," she whispered, so quietly that only he could hear. "For what?" "For showing us that family isn't just about blood or species. It's about choosing to care for each other, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." Marcus squeezed her hand gently, watching as Kira danced around their successful bioconverter, her joyful humming creating harmony with the system's operational frequencies. For the first time in his adult life, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. "Thank you," he replied, "for teaching me what home really means." A man ordered to sell a poor alien widow and her daughter, but he chose to become their family. 2 years after their first successful test on New Harvest, Marcus stood before the Galactic Commerce Union's Executive Council, wearing the finest suit he'd ever owned, and feeling more nervous than he had during any debt collection in his career. Behind him sat Lyra and Kira, both dressed in traditional Zephyrian formal wear that made their skin luminescence shimmer like captured starlight. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater carved from a single asteroid, its walls lined with viewing screens showing real-time data from across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species filled the tiered seating, their attention focused on the presentation Marcus was about to deliver. "Members of the council," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. 2 years ago, I was a debt collector for this organization. Today, I stand before you as the Chief Executive of Starweaver Bioenergetics, requesting approval to implement our bioconversion technology across all Commerce Union territories. He activated the holographic display behind him, showing the impressive results from their pilot programs. In the past 24 months, their bioconversion systems had been installed on 47 different worlds, from agricultural colonies to urban centers to mining operations. Every single installation had exceeded projected performance targets. "The numbers speak for themselves," Marcus continued. "Average energy cost reduction of 68% across all installations. Crop yield improvements averaging 22% on agricultural worlds. Waste reduction of 91% in urban environments, and perhaps most importantly, a measurable improvement in environmental stability on every world where our systems operate." Councillor Vexahai, a tall insectoid from the hegemony worlds, leaned forward in her seat. "These results are impressive, Mr. Chen, but our concern is about long-term stability. This technology seems too good to be true." "I understand your skepticism," Marcus replied. 2 years ago, I would have felt the same way. But the science is sound, and the results are consistent. Would you like to hear from our Chief Technology Officer? Lyra rose gracefully and moved to the presentation area. In the years since they'd started their company, she had grown into her role as both a scientist and a leader. Her natural luminescence seemed brighter than ever, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had found her true calling. "Honorable counselors," she began, her melodic voice carrying the subtle harmonics that made Zephyrian speech so distinctive. "My late husband dreamed of technology that would work with nature rather than against it. Our bioconversion systems don't just extract energy from organic matter, they create symbiotic relationships with living ecosystems." She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed detailed biological scans from their installation sites. "As you can see, worlds with our systems show increased biodiversity, improved soil quality, and enhanced atmospheric stability. We're not just solving the energy crisis, we're helping worlds heal themselves." "The question," interrupted Counselor Rahman from the Terra Firma delegation, "is whether this technology can be safely scaled to meet galactic demand. You're talking about fundamental changes to energy infrastructure across thousands of worlds." "Which is exactly why we need the Council's support," Marcus said, retaking the presentation area. "We have the technology, we have proven results, but we need the resources and authority to implement galaxy-wide deployment." Kira had been sitting quietly throughout the formal proceedings, but now she raised her hand with the simple directness that only children possessed. "May I say something?" The chamber fell silent. In 2 years, 10-year-old Kira Starweaver had become something of a legend in scientific circles. Her intuitive understanding of harmonic frequencies and biological systems had led to breakthrough after breakthrough. Several universities had already offered her full professorships, which she had politely declined in favor of continuing her work with the family company. "Of course, Miss Starweaver," Counselor Vexhai said with gentle amusement. "We would be honored to hear your thoughts." Kira stood and walked to the center of the presentation area with complete poise. Despite her youth, she commanded the attention of every being in the chamber. "Honorable counselors," she began, her young voice carrying surprising authority, "I know that many of you are concerned about change. Change can be scary, especially when it affects so many people. But I want to tell you about something that happened on Kepler Station last month." The display shifted to show images from their recent installation on the massive space station. Kepler Station was dying. Their old power systems were failing. Their life support was breaking down, and 20,000 people were facing evacuation. We installed our bioconversion system in their hydroponics bays, and within 6 weeks, not only were their power problems solved, but their food production increased by 40%. Kira paused, looking around the chamber with her large, expressive eyes. But that's not the important part. The important part is what happened to the people. Children who had never seen plants growing started helping in the gardens. Families began eating meals together because the hydroponic areas became gathering spaces. People started singing while they worked because the harmonic frequencies made them feel happier. She gestured to Marcus and Lyra. "My family taught me that technology should bring people together, not drive them apart. That's what Papa was trying to do with his research, and that's what we're trying to do now. We're not just offering you better energy systems, we're offering you the chance to help communities become families." The chamber erupted in discussion as the various counselors debated among themselves. Marcus felt a surge of pride as he watched Kira handle the attention with grace beyond her years. In the 2 years they'd worked together, she had grown from a frightened child into a confident young woman who understood that true strength came from caring for others. Counselor Vexhai called for order, and the chamber gradually quieted. "Miss Starweaver, your words are wise beyond your years. However, the Council must consider practical matters as well as philosophical ones. Mr. Chen, what guarantees can you offer that this technology won't be misused or weaponized?" Marcus had been expecting this question. The bioconversion systems are inherently non-weaponizable. They require living biological fields to operate, which means they can only function in environments where life is thriving. Any attempt to use them destructively would immediately shut down the system. Additionally, Lyra added, we've built safeguards into every system. If environmental conditions deteriorate beyond acceptable parameters, the converters automatically reduce output to protect the local ecosystem. They're designed to preserve life, not exploit it. Counselor Rahman leaned back in his seat, clearly impressed. You've thought of everything, haven't you? We've tried to, Marcus replied. But more importantly, we've tested everything. 47 successful installations, 0 failures, 0 environmental damage, and consistently positive results for local populations. The debate continued for another hour, with various counselors raising technical, economic, and political concerns. Marcus, Lyra, and Kira answered each question with patience and expertise, their years of real-world experience giving them credibility that theoretical presentations could never match. Finally, Counselor Vexhai called for a formal vote. All those in favor of approving galaxy-wide implementation of Starweaver bioenergetics technology under Commerce Union oversight. Marcus held his breath as the voting displays lit up around the chamber. Green lights appeared one by one as the counselors registered their approval. When the final tally appeared on the main display showing unanimous approval, the chamber erupted in applause. Congratulations, Counselor Vexhai announced. The Galactic Commerce Union hereby authorizes the full deployment of bioconversion technology across all member territories, with a recommended implementation timeline of 5 years and a total budget authorization of 50 billion credits. As they left the council chamber 3 hours later, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. 50 billion credits in funding, contracts for thousands of installations, and the authority to fundamentally change how the galaxy approached energy production. I can't believe it, he said as they walked toward their ship. 5 years ago, I was repossessing people's belongings. Now we're going to help rebuild the galaxy's infrastructure. You were always capable of this, Lyra said, linking her arm through his. You just needed the right motivation. And the right family, Kira added, taking his other hand. That evening, they celebrated at their favorite restaurant on the station's commercial level. It was a small Zephyrian establishment that served food designed to complement their species' unique metabolism, but the owner had learned to adapt the recipes for human guests like Marcus. As they shared their meal, Marcus reflected on how much their lives had changed. The scared widow and desperate child he'd first met were now successful entrepreneurs with the resources to save countless worlds. His own daughter, Sarah, had fully recovered from her surgery, funded by their company's early profits, and was now studying xenobiology at the University of New Geneva. "What are you thinking about?" Lyra asked, noticing his contemplative mood. "Just remembering that first day I came to your house," Marcus replied. "I was supposed to destroy your family, and instead you saved mine." "We saved each other," Lyra corrected gently. "That's what families do." Kira, who had been unusually quiet during dinner, suddenly looked up from her plate. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course, little star." "When you first came to our house, were you scared?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Terrified," he admitted. "I knew what I was supposed to do was wrong, but I thought I didn't have any choice. I was so focused on my own problems that I almost forgot other people had problems too." "But you chose to help us anyway." "I chose to do what was right, even though it was scary, just like you did today when you spoke to the council." Kira nodded thoughtfully. "Mama says that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you are afraid. Your mama is very wise." "I know," Kira said with the simple confidence of childhood. "That's why I asked her to marry you." Marcus nearly choked on his drink. "You what?" Across the table, Lyra's luminescence had suddenly become much brighter. and she was looking everywhere except at Marcus's face. "I asked Mama why she hasn't married you yet," Kira continued innocently. "You live with us, you work with us, you love us, and we love you. On Zephyros, that makes you family. But humans have different customs, right? They need special ceremonies?" Marcus turned to look at Lyra, who was now glowing bright enough to illuminate half the restaurant. "Is there something you'd like to tell me?" "I was going to bring it up eventually," Lyra said quietly, "but I wasn't sure if humans and Zephyrians could legally bond under galactic law." "We can," Marcus said, his heart racing. "The Universal Marriage Compact covers all sentient species. The question is whether you'd want to." Lyra finally met his eyes, and he saw in them the same depth of feeling he'd been carrying for months. "Marcus Chen, you gave up everything to save my daughter and me. You helped us build a new life, a new purpose, a new future. You've been my partner in every way that matters for 2 years now. The only question is whether you'd want to make it official." Marcus reached across the table and took her hands in his, marveling at the warmth of her luminescent skin. "Lyra Starweaver, would you marry me?" "Yes," she said simply, and her glow became so bright that other diners turned to look at their table with smiles. Kira clapped her hands in delight. "Perfect! Now we can be a real family in every culture's traditions." As Marcus looked at his new fiancée and the brilliant child who would soon officially be his daughter, he realized that his life had become something he'd never dared to imagine. He'd gone from being a man who destroyed families to being part of something beautiful and strong and lasting. 6 months later, they were married in a ceremony that blended human and Zephyrian traditions, witnessed by friends from dozens of worlds whose lives had been improved by their technology. Sarah Chen served as maid of honor, having developed a close sisterly relationship with Kira, despite their age difference. David Rodriguez walked Lyra down the aisle, representing the community that had first believed in their work. As they exchanged vows under the light of twin suns, with bioconversion installations visible in the distance, providing clean energy to the growing colony, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. He had found his purpose, his family, and his home. "Do you think Papa would be proud?" Kira whispered to Lyra during the reception. "I think he would be amazed," Lyra replied, watching Marcus dance with Sarah while Zephyrian children wove between the human guests, their luminescence creating patterns of light in the evening air. "He always dreamed that his work would bring different species together. He just never imagined it would happen like this." Years later, when Marcus was an old man and Starweaver Bioenergetics had become the galaxy's primary energy provider, he would look back on that first day he'd chosen to do the right thing as the moment his real life began. He had learned that the most important collections weren't debts or credits or possessions. They were the people you chose to love, the family you chose to build, and the legacy you chose to leave behind. And whenever young entrepreneurs asked him for advice, he would always tell them the same thing. Sometimes, the greatest success comes from giving up everything you thought you wanted to gain something you never knew you needed. The galaxy was a better place because one man chose to save a family instead of destroying it, and in saving them, he discovered that he had saved himself as well.